What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of Pistons Daily, where you can find daily content covering all things Detroit Pistons, Monday through Friday. As always, I'm your host. My name is Kyle Garrison. I'm over on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2, where I talk all things Detroit sports. So head over there, give me comments, questions, concerns, episode ideas. I'd love to hear from all you guys. Also, shout out to everyone who tunes in every single day. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way to help support the channel. And with that being said, let's jump into a Friday edition of Pistons Daily. So first things first, as always, skill of the day. And this is a skill that the Pistons absolutely are going to rely on this year, and that is just Jaden Ivey's overall three-point efficiency. And the lack of three-point shooting on this team is pretty alarming. You lose Malik Beasley, you lose Tim Hardaway Jr. Both were top 10 in single-season three-pointers made in the Pistons franchise history, and you have to replace those. Duncan Robinson's a guy that can come in and be a very solid three-point shooter, but I don't expect him to be more than a 25-minute-a-night guy. So you need somebody in the starting lineup who's going to kind of bring that three-point upside, and Jaden Ivey is got to be that guy. He has to kind of bring what he brought last year when it comes to overall efficiency. Hopefully it comes on a little bit more of an uptick in just overall shot attempts. I think he was around 5 3-point shots a game. If that can get up into 6 and 7 3-point shots a game and he still shoots 38%, that's going to be very, very helpful for this team going forward, helpful for the floor spacing, and just going to give this team a huge boost that they really, really do need, because I don't know if Caris LeVert and Tobias Harris can be 37 to 40% three-point shooters. They both were around 34% last year. They're going to have to take a huge leap, and I'm not banking on that. So I think Jaden Ivey needs to be your most consistent three-point shooter in the starting lineup if you want to see the improvement from 44 wins and become a true Eastern Conference contender. So I'm excited to see what Jaden Ivey can do when he comes back, and there's a lot of stats to back up that he will come back and be a very, very efficient shooter. When you're looking at his 2023 numbers, Jaden Ivey shot 36% from the corner, 34% on non-corner threes, and ended up shooting 34% overall from three-point range, which is in the 31st percentile for qualified combo guards. And that wasn't great. I mean, we definitely wanted to see an improvement. And in 2024, that's exactly what we got. So in 2024, the corner threes stayed at 36%, but non-corner threes jumped from 34 to 44%, which was in the 96th percentile for combo guards. And overall, he shot just under 41% from three, which was in the 89th percentile for combo guards. So not only did Jaden Ivey improve, he became one of the more efficient shooting combo guards in the entire NBA. And just with the overall shooting talent that there is in this league, it's very, very encouraging that Jaden Ivey was up there with elite company. He was up there with some of the better just overall three-point shooters in the league, and a lot of those guys are specializing as three-point shooters. Jaden Ivey, he's not he doesn't really specialize in anything. I think he's kind of just a guy that brings you some upside really everywhere on the court. And we want to see that rim efficiency go up and that mid-range efficiency go up. But the fact that the three-point efficiency is where it's at this early in his career, we got a decent sample size this past year. I am confident that he can come back. I don't know if he'll be 41%, but I think he can be anywhere from 37 to 40%. And that's going to be very, very helpful and is much needed in this starting lineup, especially like I mentioned with Tobias Harris not being, your traditional knockdown three-point shooter. He can get him up every once in a while, but that's not really where his game, where the best version of himself is. And then obviously Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson are non-shooters. So we're going to have to see some improvement overall from just everybody when it comes to three-point shooting. And then obviously I think it's going to fall on Jaden Ivey's shoulders to kind of be that knockdown three-point shooter, especially when looking at the starters. But moving on here, I wanted to touch on an article from Grant Hughes over at Bleacher Report, and he just basically dropped a list grading every team's starting five, and the Pistons came in at a B grade. And I'll just read what he wrote. So obviously the lineup is Cade, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren. And he says this group technically played together last year, but it was only for 3 non-garbage time possessions. That's as close to worthless as a sample size gets, but it's fun to note that their net rating was a plus 100. Separate injuries kept Ivey and Thompson out of the lineup for long stretches, and head coach JB Bickerstaff tended to avoid lineups that featured both together. That should change this season. If Ivey has fully recovered from this broken leg he suffered in January, and if Thompson builds on the elite defensive work that earned him full-time starting duties after the All-Star break, the Pistons could easily improve on last year's 44 wins. Cunningham is a budding superstar, Harris offers spacing, Duren controls the boards, and the Ivey-Thompson combo will bring terrifying athleticism to the mix. Pistons lineup that included everyone above except Ivey were a plus 4.4 last season. As long as Ivey can knock down shots from the perimeter like he did prior to injury, 40.9% on 5.1 attempts per game, the 2025-2026 Pistons starters should be at least that good. And the other teams that were in the B tier were the Atlanta Hawks, the LA Clippers, the LA Lakers, the San Antonio Spurs, and for some reason, the Portland Trailblazers. The Trailblazers starting 5 is nowhere near any of these 5 teams that I just mentioned. I mean, the Spurs, Lakers, Clippers, Hawks, Pistons all have significantly better starting 5, so I'm not sure why the Trailblazers were here. But outside of that, I thought that the list was pretty solid from Grant Hughes. He does have the Magic at an A-, and if you're just looking at the starting 5, with Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Desmond Bane, outside of Cade Cunningham, all 3 of those players would be the second best player on the Pistons right now, and I don't think that's a very hot take. So I get that. I get that they're up in the A- tier, but their bench is much worse than the Pistons and some of these teams in the B tier. So, we'll take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, it's just starting 5s. But I think the Pistons at a B is very fair. And, we're not looking at them as a solidified B tier. They have so much room for growth to get it up into that A tier because 4 of their 5 starters are under the age of 24 and they haven't really played together pretty much ever. We just talked about it. They played 3 possessions together as a group, and that's going to change this year. We're going to get a sample size right away, game 1 of the season. And when you're looking at just everyone in this lineup, they have so many different skills that I think are going to complement one another. I mean, Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson last year were such a fun defensive tandem. Ausar made Jalen Duren so much better defensively. Cade makes Jalen Duren a top 15 offensive center in this league with room to get up into that top 10. And I think that Jaden Ivey kind of fitting back into where Tim Hardaway Jr. was last year will be very helpful for Ausar Thompson's offensive game. And then I think Ausar Thompson's defensive game is really going to help Jaden Ivey kind of come into his own as a perimeter defender. So very, very excited for that. And just the fact that the NBA media is kind of grouping the Pistons with teams like the Lakers and the Clippers and even the Spurs and the Hawks who have made huge additions to their teams is very, very encouraging because, again, the Pistons didn't make a ton of additions this season. They basically just built through their young core. And if you were coming into last year and you said that they would be in the same tier as teams like the Lakers and the Clippers, I wouldn't have believed you. So it's very, very fun that they've made this huge leap and they're being talked about in the same category as some of these teams, but they're going to have to come out this year and show that they belong and that they weren't just a one-year wonder. But I do think that they will prove to people that Cade's legit, this young core is legit. We've got guys off the bench like Ron Holland and Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson who are going to provide great minutes, and this team is going to be a lot of fun to watch next year. But let me know in the comments if you agree with Grant Hughes' list from Bleacher Report or if you think the Pistons' current starting lineup is higher or lower than a B grade. But moving on, another topic that I think has just kind of been circulating the Pistons community is outside of Cade Cunningham, who has the highest upside on this team this year and kind of who can take that similar leap that we saw from Cade last year. And I've talked about this guy a ton. I've given him very high praise, but I truly think that Ausar Thompson is going to develop a very deep offensive bag. And this year is where we will see him kind of turn into a 14 to 16 point per game scorer on maybe 3.5 assists, 6+ rebounds a game. And that's a perfect foundation for what he can be offensively because, again, he is a defensive-minded player, and whatever he gives you on the offensive end is just an added bonus. It's an added luxury because I don't think he's going to be a 25-5 guy as soon as this year. Maybe down the line that can be where he sits at, but I don't think that he's going to, match the offensive output of somebody like Jaden Ivey this year. But I do think that whatever you get from him offensively is just an added luxury to a team that is young, they're athletic, they get out in transition, and those are all three things that Ausar Thompson has in his bag, and they're all three things that are, high upside skills that Ausar Thompson has. So obviously he's a monster, defensively, but you really just add a marginally improved offensive bag, and I think he's automatically a top 100 player in this league with room to get up into that top 75 and that top 50, just because what we saw from Amen Thompson last year, the leap he took offensively, he had a full offseason to work going into year 2, and now Ausar Thompson has a similar body of work as Amen. They're very similar players overall when you just look at their archetypes and you look at how they play the game, their fluid movements and whatnot. And I do think he can take that Amen Thompson type leap this year with room for more. I think that he could potentially even do more than what Amen did from year 2 to year 3, or from year 1 to year 2. I don't think that Ausar will be quite as good as an offensive player as Amen this year, but they will start to even out as Ausar gets more comfortable and just has more chances to get out on the floor, play significant minutes, and kind of be as important to the Pistons as Amen is to the Rockets. But just let me know in the comments if you think that Ausar Thompson can kind of make that leap that we kind of saw from Amen, or if you think that maybe somebody like Jaden Ivey or Jalen Duren or Ron Holland is going to take that leap, and they're going to have the second highest upside on this team outside of Cade Cunningham. But last topic before we end the show here is I just want to do a fun trade proposal. Again, the offseason is just at the worst part of the year. There's absolutely nothing going on. I mean, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat waiting for Malik Beasley to potentially return. So it is very, very slow right now. So it's just something to kind of get people excited. And this is very, very hypothetical. So don't flame me in the comments for the amount of things that the Pistons would have to give up for this player. But I wanted to talk about Devin Booker. He's from Michigan. We know he's a big Red Wings, Tigers, Lions fan. I'm sure deep down he's a Pistons fan as well. But obviously, he would cost an absolute haul. And, I don't think that the Pistons would do this. I don't even know if the Suns would do this because they just re-signed Devin Booker to a 2-year extension where he's one of the highest paid players in the entire NBA, around like $65 million a year or something like that. But it just puts into perspective that the Pistons have so many assets. They have all their draft capital. So if they wanted to go out and make a huge splash, if they think this year they are contenders to go win an NBA championship and they want to, overhaul their roster and send a huge trade package for a player of Devin Booker's caliber, they have that luxury. And again, Trajan Langdon's not a guy that's going to just give up on his young core as easily as some other NBA GMs and president of basketball operations. But I'm sure he's somebody that wants to win. And if you think that's going to, make your team a championship contender, then maybe you listen to an offer at least. But the trade overall would be Tobias Harris for the contract, Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, and 3 first-round picks. This was proposed over by Pistons Powered, and it was Tyler Watts over at Pistons Powered. And I don't think that 3 first-round picks would be the asking price. I think closer to 2, just with the ceiling that Ron Holland has. I do think that 2 first-round picks would get it done if you did include Jaden Ivey, Ron Holland, and Tobias Harris. And it's an insane amount, and it's your entire future. So if you don't want to give up your entire future for somebody who might not, it's all hypothetical, so he might not bring you to championship level. I mean, we saw with the Nets a couple years ago, KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving couldn't get it done. They only won 1 playoff series, and it set their franchise back a good 10 plus years. So if you don't end up winning a championship with Devin Booker in 2 to 3 years, you might be looking at a situation like that. And as a diehard Pistons fan who will continue to be a Pistons fan for the rest of my life no matter what, I don't want to see that. I want to see competitive team fielded every single year. And I still want them to obviously be championship contenders. But if you have to give up an immense amount of draft capital and all your young talent, is it worth it? We've talked about it again. If you go out and get Lauri Markkanen and he doesn't pan out, What does your young core look like? What does your future look like? If you go out and get Pascal Siakam, if you go out and get Devin Booker, all of these players are on massive non-team friendly contracts. So your flexibility with cap space is gone, and you have to rely on them being, the star that you think they can be. And if they don't mesh next to Cade Cunningham, who is your franchise player going forward, then is it really worth it? I don't think so. But, let me know in the comments. I want you guys to be able to kind of decipher whether or not you would do this trade. But again, let me know in the comments down below if you think that the Pistons should pursue somebody of Devin Booker's caliber or Devin Booker, or do you think they should stick with the young core, keep their draft capital, and try to win with what they currently have? Personally, I think that's the right steps to take, and I think that's also what Trajan Langdon wants to do. So I don't see a huge blockbuster trade going down anytime soon, but again, we don't know. It's the NBA. There's a lot that can go down, and the Pistons could be 15 games over 500 at the trade deadline and be buyers. So we don't really know what that's going to look like. Obviously, only time will tell. So just an interesting topic to look at. Again, I love Devin Booker. I would absolutely love to see him in a Pistons uniform, but just depending on the right price, I don't think that overhauling the roster, getting rid of Ron Holland, getting rid of Jaden Ivey, and all your draft capital is the answer right now. Maybe down the line, but as of right now, I don't know if that's really going to push the needle to make them an actual NBA championship contender. But that's all I've got for you guys today on a Friday edition of Pistons Daily. As always, like, subscribe, comment, turn on post notifications, and follow me on Twitter at Kyle Garrison2. Once again, thank you all so much for tuning in every single day. With that being said, that is going to do it here for episode 62 of Pistons Daily, and I will catch you all next time.